What's going on, guys? It's Horse Beef here, and I want to talk about the aftermath of Dricus Du Plessis versus Khamzat Chimaev. And mostly what I'm referring to is some of the backlash that Khamzat Chimaev has been getting, but also some of the strange claims that Morne Visser, DDP's head coach, has made on an interview with Submission Radio, which leave me scratching my head as to whether or not he really took Khamzat Chimaev seriously as an opponent.
I think we could have done a lot better, but I also think the ref should have done better. But you know what it's like when you lose or something doesn't go your way, you always want to blame somebody else. But I do think the refs should have just made that fight a lot more live, or a little bit more live.
Now, I know he's being clowned for this moment right here, but I see where he's coming from. I know where he's coming from. There were moments where Khamzat Chimaev had the back and was just feeding knees into DDP's thigh, right? Similarly to what Merab did quite often against Sean O'Malley. But I wasn't complaining that fight should have been stood up because, as I said in my last video, right, I wanted Merab to beat Sean O'Malley. So when I witnessed him do something similar to Sean O'Malley, I loved it because I wanted Merab to win, right? So obviously the coach of the fighter would have wanted the fight to be stood up, and obviously fans of Khamzat Chimaev or Khamzat Chimaev's corner would have found that stupid and sort of thrown DDP a bone, right? So depending on which side of the aisle you're on would determine whether or not you agree with what Morne Visser has said. You know what I'm saying? And I'm an objective person, so I can admit that. Now, would I have liked to see the fight stood up more? Sure, maybe. But at the same time, I also understand why it wasn't, because Khamzat Chimaev was doing what he wanted with DDP on the ground and putting him in dominant positions such as crucifixes over and over and over again. He was big brothering Dricus Du Plessis on the ground. He was dominating him. I know some people are saying it wasn't dominant because he didn't deal a whole lot of damage, but I'm sorry. If I'm able to hold a grown man on the ground for 21 minutes out of a 25-minute fight, I've dominated that man. If I'm able to secure arguably like 3 10-8 rounds, right? We rarely see 1 10-8 round, right? Like, let alone in a title fight from the challenger. But we see 3 10-8 rounds, arguably. How could you say it's not domination? It was. It's a definition on the scorecards. That is what domination is. Was it entertaining domination? No. And there's nothing wrong with saying that either. Like, both things can be true. It can be a dominant performance, but also not be very entertaining. And there's nothing wrong with saying it wasn't fun to watch, right? The people who say, oh, go watch kickboxing, they want you to be of the same opinion as them, right? They can't handle the fact that you didn't enjoy what Khamzat Chimaev did and it was boring. They're insecure about the fact that the fight wasn't very entertaining because they were hoping that Khamzat, like deep down, they were also hoping that Khamzat Chimaev would go out there and finish DDP. So they're kind of insecure about this because now people have a bit of an alibi to say, oh, yeah, who cares if he won? It was a boring fight. I'm not saying who cares if he won. It was a boring fight because I'm of the opinion that was a very, very impressive performance, because it was. He did everything that I didn't expect him to do, to be able to put up that type of dominant grappling display over the course of 5 rounds when we all thought that he would go in there and have 1, maybe 2 rounds in him. He proved me wrong. So I'm not going to now turn around and say, oh, you're boring. Oh, you only won because you wet blanketed him. But I didn't think that DDP would allow that to happen to him. And if DDP has no answer, then some of the blame has to be put on DDP. Not just DDP, but the fucking coach. Because his corner advice was akin to Tim Welch's for Sean O'Malley against Merab the first time around. It's almost done, buddy. Like, after the first round of Khamzat Chimaev laying on top of Dricus, Morne Visser was essentially talking like I was, or any of us who were picking DDP, who were breaking down the fight, saying that Khamzat has 1 round in him. He was telling DDP that was the best he had. Put this big smile on DDP's face, gave him this false sense of security just for him to be taken down and for the exact same thing to happen to him in round 2. And from that point on, we realized that Morne Visser had no plan B for Dricus. And as we get further into the interview, that becomes very clear.
If I just needed an extra minute at the end there. But yeah, I think the fight was smothered by a lot of boringness. I don't think the crowd was happy. I remember when we walked in, the crowd was booing DDP, and like 3 minutes into the fight, they were all booing Khamzat for just holding Dricus down. So, but fuck, man, he does a good job with that. He's very good at his wrestling. So yeah, hats off to him.
So at least Mornay does give credit to Khamzat's wrestling. Of course, how could he not? It was an incredible display of dominance on top. It really was, of top control. I'm not sure if I've seen top control like that in a long time. I don't know, bringing up the crowd booing and, booing DDP and then going on to boo Khamzat Chimaev like 3 minutes into the fight. I get that. But it appeared to me like DDP was taking the first round off to try and gas out Khamzat, make Khamzat work, but he wasn't doing anything to actually make Khamzat work. It's as if Mornay and DDP were of the opinion that all they had to do was just sit there, defend submission attempts, and that's all they had to do, and then Khamzat would just gas out. No, he wasn't making him work. And if the entire game plan centered around waiting for Khamzat to tire himself out, and you had no other answer other than that, and then Khamzat doesn't tire himself out, and you show that you have no answer past that point, then I'm sorry, guys. If what Khamzat's doing is working, why would he switch it up for the sake of your entertainment when he stated in the past that he fights for money? He fights for money, so of course he's going to fight to win the fight. And it takes the right dance partner to make you work. And people only want to bring up this is boring, that's boring, when it happens to their favorite fighters. This is not the first, nor will it be the last time that a belt is won off of a boring performance. What happened when Kamaru Usman fought Tyron Woodley? He was clowned for the foot stomps. And then went on to become an entertaining champion afterwards, right? Became a knockout guy. Khamzat Chimaev is, generally speaking, a very entertaining fighter to watch because he goes for the finish. He puts up one performance like this to win the belt, right? A very safe performance. And I get the criticisms, I do. This shit was boring as fuck, man. I said it in my last video. I almost fell asleep. But it was the perfect fight for Khamzat to fight. It was the perfect fight because we saw while it was on the feet, he had nothing for DDP. He really had nothing to offer. He was going to lose a stand-up fight. So obviously, he went out there and did what he did. It makes sense. And DDP did very well to fight off submissions. But if you're being put in a crucifix over and over and over and over, then there's only DDP to blame there. Obviously, Khamzat is going to do what he does best, whether it's entertaining or not. I found this particular comment underneath Khamzat's post calling out RDR. I assume this is a call out of RDR. But this is just crazy, man. Apocalyptic language. This fickle fan base just jumping to say you're the worst champion of all time? Dude, he completely dominated and left DDP helpless. The worst champion of all time. Really? He just won the belt. He hasn't even had the opportunity to defend it yet. And if he wants to fight in October and turn around that quickly, how could he possibly be the worst champion of all time? He's calling out RDR. RDR stylistically is the toughest matchup for Khamzat Chimaev, I believe. I know some people think it's Anthony Hernandez. I actually think it's RDR because unlike DDP, RDR actually has elite bottom game. And he's humongous, right? He's very strong, he's very big, and he has that DDP type gas tank where he can push it. And he would actually make Chimaev work, right? So Chimaev, in my opinion, would have to push for a finish in that one because RDR would actually make Khamzat Chimaev work from the top. And if he's able to do that, maybe we would see Khamzat fade like we're used to seeing in the later rounds because what DDP did is just not how you tire out your opponent. He was giving Khamzat nothing to worry about from the bottom. RDR would. He potentially has some of the best bottom game in MMA, right? Regardless of weight class, the man is just super, super high level and crafty off of his back. And if he's to get top control on Khamzat Chimaev, I'm not too sure if he would be able to do that. Like, I don't believe that his judo throws would really be enough for Khamzat Chimaev. I'm not too sure if they would be. But it's the kind of fight that I could see turning into a Gilbert Burns versus Khamzat Chimaev type fight because of the threat of the submission off the bottom. Because we saw what Khamzat Chimaev did with Gilbert Burns. Once he realized that Gilbert Burns was going to attack so many submissions off of his back, he kind of abandoned that game plan. And RDR is a humongous man, right? He's so big for 185. Very wiry as well. And if Khamzat Chimaev abandoned that game plan against Gilbert Burns, then conceivably it would make sense that he would do the same against RDR. And if that fight ends up being on the feet, even though Khamzat's a more technical striker than RDR is very long, very wiry, very strange with his timing, right? And has kind of deceptive power, has a decent jab and that nice step-in knee. I could see him giving Khamzat some real problems. And that's not just memes, dude. Not too sure who I would pick. It would probably end up being RDR just for the memes because I love RDR. So obviously I'm going to pick the guy who I love. You know, not all picks has to be based off of logic, but I think logically it still does make sense to actually go with someone like RDR in that matchup.
I mean, so we've practiced everything except a crucifix. And there's just a way that he trapped the arm very high, almost trapped the bicep, tricep, and the shoulder with that crucifix. So it feels like you've got movement, but so you can give the one arm up to roll the other one out, or roll in and back out, but he just doesn't allow it. He's just so tight with it.
So I find this to be very strange. Why would you not put DDP in crucifix positions and allow him to fight out of it, right? So that's confusing in and of itself, because the crucifix position is a very dominant position. So like, if you're expecting to be taken down, then you should also be prepared to be put in a position like a crucifix, arguably the most dominant position you can possibly have somebody in on the ground, aside from maybe having their back with the body triangle locked in. But you didn't prepare for that position? Is that just arrogance from DDP's coach? I'm not too sure what to attribute that to, but I find that to be completely mind-blowing.
I'm going to have to, I'm already busy with, get guys that does it like Khamzat do or better, where Dricus is going to have to work for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 exchanges to get out, but does not stop. Khamzat, we've tried, and if you relook at the fight, Dricus tried once, got stopped. Tried once, maybe twice, got stopped. Reset, try again. Reset, try again. We need a lot more than that. We need 4, 5, 6 times, 3, 4, 5 times, 3, 4, 5 times.
Now this begs the question as to like how seriously did Morne Visser and DDP's team take Khamzat's wrestling? You really thought that Khamzat would just shoot once and that's it? Stuff the one takedown, that's it, when he's one of the best chain wrestlers we've ever seen? So I'm confused, man. I'm confused. What Morne thought would happen in this fight, because it seems to me like he was in the same mind as myself and everybody else who was picking DDP, expecting him to survive the first round, and that's all it took. But it can never be that simple, right? Preparing your own fighter to survive and just allow Khamzat to fight his fight until he tires himself out magically, despite not doing anything off of your back to tire him out, it was just very silly, and it appeared as if Morne Visser had no real answer for any of it in the corner between rounds. He looked just as helpless as DDP did. But I'm not going to go around saying that he needs to leave Morne Visser and that Morne Visser is an embarrassment of a coach. I understand where he's coming from. I get what he's trying to say. Right? He said it himself. Him and DDP, they're bad losers. I know DDP did show a lot of class, a lot of grace after the fact. But Morne Visser's allowed to say what he wants, and I get where he's coming from. I know what he's saying. But I feel like he's way too hopeful after a result like this. He needs to be more harsh, not only with DDP, but with himself as well. He needs to be harsh with himself. And he should take a bit of accountability for the fact that he just simply didn't prepare DDP enough. Like, he brings up these facts as if they're just throwaway comments. Like, oh yeah, we didn't even prepare the crucifix. Yeah, we didn't prepare for 3, 4, 5 shots. So I think it would help if you just took accountability for that and said, my bad. In hindsight, we should have prepared him better for these positions. But I didn't make this video for the purpose of shitting on Morne Visser. Right? I think what he did with DDP is incredible, right? I think it's incredible. But this interview kind of paints the picture that Morne Visser did not take Khamzat as seriously as a contender as he really should have. And that's on him, right? And he said it. He said he'll fix this, he'll fix this. And all we can do is trust the man. Because look at what he did with DDP. DDP had no right to ever become a champion. And he brought him to that point where he could become a champion. So writing off Morne Visser as just a shit coach, man, all of a sudden he's a washed coach, man. Morne Visser has nothing to offer. No, that's just not the case. He got DDP where he was. Now this is a learning experience, not only for DDP, but for Morne Visser. So let's see. Let's hold off for DDP's next fight to see how he bounces back. If he goes in there and he looks the same and he gets dominated once again, then sure. It's a pattern at that point. But it isn't a pattern that Morne Visser is just some type of a trash coach. No, he did something amazing with DDP. Just like it isn't a pattern that Khamzat Chimaev is suddenly a boring fighter because of one boring performance. I get it. I'm not a fan of Khamzat Chimaev either. I've said it before. I'm not a fan of him as a human being, really, based on the past of with him with the crypto and all that. I'm not a fan of the dude. But I'm also not going to take out my frustrations for DDP and his performance, his lack of performance, out on Chimaev for doing what he does, which benefits him. I just simply won't do it. I can't do it. I'm sorry, guys. And if that's what you were expecting, then sorry to disappoint you, right? But that does conclude my thoughts On Dricus Du Plessis versus Khamzat Chimaev in the aftermath there, I wanted to highlight some of the words from Morne Visser and just talk about some of the reactions. Like, I didn't want to show all types of different examples because everyone's really saying the same shit, that it was boring and it wasn't dominant because it was boring and he didn't do damage or whatever, man. But as I said, if I'm able to hold a man down for 21 minutes, a grown man, if I'm able to hold him down for 21 minutes, I've dominated that man. I said it before and I'll say it again. And my opinion won't change on that one. It wasn't entertaining, sure, but it was absolutely dominant. And he did something that I never expected, so I must give it up to Khamzat Chimaev. But anyway, guys, I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you on the next one.